Alright, scholars, welcome to a new video. Today I wanted to talk about CommonLit. Last week we had 2 assignments on CommonLit. We're going to be using the platform going forward even more. I want to be sure you understand it fully. First things first, whenever you get an assignment from CommonLit and you click the link from Google Classroom, if you're ever running into problems with logging in, just on the upper right hand corner there's a login. You press login and then you log in with your Google School account and you should be all set. So if you're running into problems, those are the first 2 steps you do before you email us to ask for help. Before we get started, I want to talk about standards because that is what drives everything that we do as teachers. Standards, if you were my student last year, you know what they are. You probably heard people talk about it. Standards are the things that you need to know and be able to do by the time you leave a certain grade. Here we have a list of the 7th grade reading standards. They're split into key ideas and details, craft and structure, and integration of knowledge and ideas. So last week and this week coming forward and maybe even further, Mr. Millett and I, we want to focus on 7R6, which is all about point of view. So if you look back on the articles we did last week, you'll see that the questions mostly dealt with how to analyze how the author was developing and contrasting their point of view and the perspectives of different characters or even themselves. So let's go on to one of the articles from last week, which was Unusual Normality. When you encounter an article on CommonLit, you'll see the title up here. You'll see information about when it was published, when it was written, and who wrote it. In this gray box, you'll get information about the author, and you'll also get a very important note about the skill focus. And remember, I told you we were focusing on point of view. This kind of preps you before you start reading, so you know what to look out for. Another thing that we consider when deciding what to assign you is we want to make sure that the Lexile is within your range. That's why we do the reading inventory. We're not going to give you something if you're not at a 1245 yet. We're not going to give you a 1245. You're not going to understand a lot of it. You're not going to enjoy it. So we want to keep the Lexile within your range. Over here you have the font size, so if you don't want to squint, you can kind of play with that a little bit. Here you have translate, so if you would like to translate it in any other language, you have a list here you can choose from. And as you're reading, you can hover or click, and it will give you the Spanish translation. That's a cool tool. You also have a read aloud tool. You can click it, and the computer will read for you. It's kind of like a computery voice, but it might be nice to kind of read along with. Some people like that. A really cool tool that CommonLit has is the annotation. So if you find a detail that you think is important, especially when dealing with point of view, you just highlight what you want. And you can either just highlight it in a certain color, you can even make a little note, and you can type in the note, this is the note. And that way when you're answering questions later on, you have something to kind of help you out with. I'm going to delete that. All right. So let's talk about, there are 2 questions that you got. You have guiding questions and assessment questions. And actually, just a heads up, you'll see numbers here. They'll usually tell you some vocabulary words like omen. It's a sign of what will happen in the future. If you go all the way down to the bottom of the article, you'll see a list of these vocabulary words. It's always great. It's a great idea to read these over and see if you can introduce any of these new words into your writings and when we do academic discussions. So as you're reading, there's something called guiding questions. And the guiding questions, as you know, you will only see the text up to the guiding question, and the rest will be hidden. When you get to that guiding question, in order to move on, you have to answer this correctly. When you answer it correctly, it opens up the next section of the text. This text actually had 10 guiding questions because it was kind of a longer text. So that's one part, is a guiding question. The second part is the assessment questions. And this goes back to what we were talking about before when I was telling you that we were focusing on this standard, because each question is testing you on one of those standards. So even question number 1 is testing you on point of view. What is the author's point of view about sharing his background? Then they're asking you for details that back it up, and that is actually that point 1 standard. It kind of goes like that, right? For the majority of them, we're testing point of view. And even the written response was also point of view. So those are the 2. You have guiding questions that open up the rest of the text for you as you answer correctly, and you have the assessment questions. Now, I wanted to show you what this looks like as a teacher. What does a teacher see? So when I log in, I can go to an assignment. I get a glance of this assignment. I see that 16 of the students in this class did not complete the assignment, which is really bad, but we're going to work on that. I can see the average score that the students received. I can see which students received what scores. I see the top 3 scores and the bottom 3 scores. And it tells me how many students got a 4 on the written response, a 3, 2, 1, or a 0. The first thing I see is the guiding questions. I can actually see if I hover over, it tells me what the guiding questions were. And it tells me how many attempts it took you to answer the question correctly. So if I look at this student right here, I know, wow, they really read carefully before answering each question because they got it on their first try. Whereas I can read down here and I can say, okay, well, this student obviously was just clicking random choices until they passed on through. Okay, so it's very easy to tell who is actually taking time to deliberately go through and actually try to comprehend and understand the text, and those that are just trying to get this assignment done as fast as possible. Second are the assessment questions. And this is the score that you would see, right? I can see this student here who got a 90%. They answered every multiple choice question correctly, but they got a 2 out of 4 in their written response. So that's why they don't have a perfect 100. Whereas this student here, across the board, they got all the multiple choice correct, and they got a 4 out of 4. Then it also shows me the students who have not completed the assignment yet. So your final score, actually, we didn't pull it from here only. We decided that this should also be part of your score, because I think it says a lot that this student, for example, got everything on their first try, and then maybe they struggled over here and they got a 60. So what I did was I did 40% of your grade was how you did in the guiding questions, and 60% of your grade is the percentage here. So it helped people out a little bit by putting the score up. However, I will say that the students who had a 90 and 100, I ignored the guiding questions, because if you got 100 on the assessment questions, I know for sure that you were really comprehending what you were reading. So even if you struggled a little bit over here, perhaps, you were not penalized for it. So really, this is only to kind of help you. But definitely, Mr. Millett and I are going to meet with the students who we see obviously weren't very careful, so we can kind of help them, right? So that is CommonLit for you. I don't know if you have any other questions, just feel free to email. We're going to be using this more and more. There are excellent articles. I mean, I really enjoyed this. We're going to read it out loud this coming week, actually. So thank you for all of your hard work, those of you who completed the assignment and did it well and put forth your best effort. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. See you soon.